August 16, 1943, 11:47 a.m., 24,000 feet above Schweinfurt, Germany, Major James Herky Morris pushed his P-38 Lightning into a near-vertical dive, watching his airspeed indicator climb past 400 miles per hour. Behind him, 18 Focke-Wulf 190s and Messerschmitt Bf 109s were tearing into a formation of B-17 flying fortresses. The bomber crews were dying. Morris had 3 wingmen. The Germans had 18 fighters. The math was suicide. His hands were slick with sweat inside leather gloves. The twin Allison engines screamed as he rolled inverted. Through the canopy, he could see tracer fire stitching through the aluminum skin of a B-17 called Memphis Belle II. The bomber's No. 3 engine was trailing black smoke. Crew members were bailing out, their parachutes blooming white against the dark August sky. Before we continue with Major Morris's incredible story, we need your help to keep these forgotten heroes alive. If you're already hooked by what you're hearing, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to share this with more people who care about real history. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story of courage and innovation from World War II. And here's something we love. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Your country, your city. We have viewers from Buenos Aires to Berlin, from Manila to Montreal. Are you a veteran? Did your grandfather serve? Do you have a connection to this war? We want to hear from you. Now back to 24,000 feet above Schweinfurt, where Major James Morris was about to prove every Luftwaffe pilot wrong about the P-38 Lightning. Morris wasn't supposed to be here. Nobody thought the P-38 belonged in European skies. The Lightning, with its distinctive twin-boom design and central nacelle, looked like something from a science fiction magazine. German pilots had nicknamed it Der Gabelschwanzteufel, the fork-tailed devil, but the name was mockery, not respect. Luftwaffe tactical reports from July 1943 were explicit. The American P-38 is too slow in turning combat. Engage with confidence. Our Bf 109G and FW 190A maintain superiority in horizontal maneuvers. The numbers backed them up. Between May and July 1943, the 55th Fighter Group, Morris's unit, had lost 42 P-38s in dogfights over occupied France and Germany. 42 planes, 38 pilots dead or missing. The P-38's loss rate in air-to-air combat was running at 19% per mission. For comparison, the P-47 Thunderbolt was losing 7%. The P-51 Mustang hadn't even arrived in Europe yet. James Herbert Morris was 26 years old. He'd grown up in Amarillo, Texas, population 43,000, where his father ran a crop dusting service. Herky, everyone called him Herky because of his stocky build and thick shoulders, had been flying since he was 14, helping his father spray pesticide over cotton fields in biplanes that barely stayed airborne. By the time he was 17, he could dead-stick land a Stearman with both eyes closed. By 22, he was an instructor at Randolph Field. By 25, he was leading a fighter squadron into combat over Europe. Herky stood 5'7" in his boots. He wore size 6 gloves. His flight suit had to be custom-tailored because standard issue hung on him like a tent. Other pilots called him Half Pint until they saw him fly. He'd arrived in England in April 1943 with the 55th Fighter Group, part of the 8th Air Force's expanding Fighter Command. The 55th flew P-38 Lightnings exclusively. On paper, the Lightning was a technological marvel. Two 425 horsepower Allison engines, a 20mm cannon and 4 50 caliber machine guns mounted in the nose, no convergence issues like wing-mounted guns. A top speed of 414 miles per hour at altitude, range to escort bombers deep into Germany and back. On paper, the P-38 was perfect. In combat, pilots were dying. The problem wasn't the engines. The Allisons were reliable, powerful, and they gave the P-38 extraordinary speed in level flight. The problem wasn't the guns. Concentrated nose-mounted firepower meant every round went where you aimed. The problem wasn't even the twin-boom design, which gave pilots excellent visibility and made the aircraft stable as a gun platform. The problem was doctrine. The Army Air Forces had trained P-38 pilots to fight like P-40 pilots, turn with the enemy, engage in close-quarters dogfights. Use your superior firepower to overwhelm German fighters in twisting, slashing knife fights at 15,000 feet. It was killing them. Lieutenant Robert Bobby Chen learned this on July 23, 1943. Chen was from San Francisco, California. He'd graduated from Berkeley with a degree in mechanical engineering before the war. He and Herky had become friends during training. Chen was the only pilot who never made jokes about Herky's height. They'd made plans. After the war, they'd open an aviation business together, Morris and Chen Air Services, 50-50 partners. They'd shaken hands on it the night before Bobby's last mission. July 23rd was a bomber escort mission to Hamburg, 60 B-17s, 24 P-38s. The bombers dropped their payload and turned for home. Then the Messerschmitts arrived. Chen was flying Morris's wing when 3 Bf-109Gs jumped them at 18,000 feet. Bobby did exactly what he'd been trained to do. He broke left, pulled into a hard climbing turn, tried to get angles on the nearest 109. The Messerschmitt pilot was better. The German simply tightened his turn, stayed inside Bobby's radius, and walked cannon rounds up the P-38's left engine nacelle. Bobby's Lightning didn't explode. It just fell. Morris watched his friend's plane tumble through 17,000 feet of empty sky, both engines streaming fire, the canopy still closed. Bobby never got out. The P-38 hit the North Sea at 400 miles per hour. The impact crater was visible from 10,000 feet. The official report said, Lieutenant Chen attempted turning combat with superior enemy aircraft. Results, fatal. Morris read that report 17 times. Each time, the same thought hammered through his head. Bobby hadn't done anything wrong. He'd followed doctrine. He'd flown by the manual. The manual had killed him. Between July 23rd and August 10th, the 55th Fighter Group lost 9 more P-38s in turning combat. 9 more pilots. All the same way. German fighters would engage, the P-38s would try to outturn them, and the Messerschmitts or Focke-Wulfs would simply tighten their turns and shoot the Americans out of the sky. The Bf-109G could sustain a 22 degree per second turn rate at 15,000 feet. The FW-190A could hit 23 degrees per second. The P-38, 19 degrees per second. In a sustained turning fight, the Germans had a 3 to 4 degree advantage. That was enough. That was everything. On August 11th, Morris was sitting alone in his quarters at RAF Nuthampstead. It was 2 in the morning. He couldn't sleep. Outside, rain hammered the corrugated metal roof. The room smelled like aviation oil and old tobacco. He'd been reviewing after-action reports, trying to find a pattern, trying to understand why his pilots kept dying. Then he saw it. It wasn't in the reports. It was in his memory. Back in Texas, crop dusting in his father's Stearman, Herky had learned a fundamental truth about aerodynamics. Heavy aircraft with lots of power could outdive lighter aircraft. Every time. No exceptions. It was physics. Mass times acceleration. A heavier plane with more horsepower would always win a dive. The P-38 weighed 17,500 pounds fully loaded. The Bf-109G weighed 7,500 pounds. The P-38 had 2 engines producing 850 total horsepower. The Bf-109 had 1 engine producing 475 horsepower. In a dive, the P-38 would accelerate faster and reach higher terminal velocity than any single-engine fighter Germany built. But doctrine said, don't dive. Engage in turning combat. Fight the way fighters have always fought. Morris grabbed a pencil. He started calculating. The P-38's compressibility problems kicked in around Mach 068, roughly 525 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. But below that speed, the aircraft was stable, and the Lightning could reach 450 miles per hour in a dive without buffeting or control issues. The Bf-109G redlined at 390 miles per hour in a dive. Structural limits. The FW-190 could hit 425, but the pilot started experiencing control stiffness above 400. That was the answer. The P-38 couldn't outturn German fighters, but it could outdive them, outrun them vertically, use gravity and power to create speed no German pilot could match. Morris spent the next 3 hours working out tactics. The key was altitude. Start high, 25,000 feet or above. When enemy fighters engaged, don't turn, don't dogfight. Instead, roll inverted, pull into a near-vertical dive, use both Allisons at military power to accelerate to 450 miles per hour, then pull out below the enemy and extend. The Germans couldn't follow. Their fighters would either stall trying to pull out of the dive, or they'd rip their wings off, trying to match your speed. Once you'd extended and created separation, you could zoom back up to altitude using your surplus energy, reset the engagement and repeat. Or better yet, dive on them again while they were still climbing. Still slow, still vulnerable. It was hit and run, slash attacks, energy fighting, everything the manual said not to do. On August 12th, Morris gathered his four-plane flight in the ready room. Lieutenant Jack Wilson from Des Moines, Iowa, Lieutenant Pete Romano from Brooklyn, New York, Lieutenant Tom Jefferson from Atlanta, Georgia. Morris laid out the new tactics. He drew diagrams on the blackboard. He explained the physics. He said, "We stop turning with them, we dive on them, shoot, extend, and zoom back up. We're faster than they are. We're heavier. We're more powerful. We use it." Wilson said, "That's not in the manual, Major." Morris said, "Bobby Chen followed the manual. Bobby's dead." Nobody argued after that. The problem was authority. Morris was a squadron leader, but he didn't have clearance to change fighter doctrine. If he ordered his pilots to abandon turning combat and got them killed doing something unauthorized, he'd face court-martial, if he survived. So he didn't make it an order. He made it a suggestion. He said, "If you want to try this, follow my lead. If you don't, fight your own way. No questions asked." All three pilots said they'd follow. On August 13th, Morris's flight escorted bombers to Regensburg. They ran into 4 Bf-109s over southern Germany. Morris rolled inverted and dived, accelerating to 440 miles per hour. Wilson, Romano, and Jefferson followed. The Messerschmitts tried to follow. One of them pulled too hard out of the dive and shed both wings at 8,000 feet. The other three broke off the attack. Morris's flight didn't fire a shot. They didn't need to. The Germans couldn't keep up. On August 14th, they tried it again. This time, Morris caught a FW-190 in a high-side diving pass, his 20mm cannon rounds punching through the German fighter's engine cowling. The Focke-Wulf went down trailing fire, first confirmed victory using the new tactics. On August 15th, word spread through the 55th Fighter Group. Other pilots started asking Morris how he'd done it. He showed them the diagrams. He explained the energy management. He said, "It's not secret, it's physics." By the morning of August 16th, 12 P-38 pilots in the 55th were using Morris's dive tactics, informally, unofficially, without authorization from higher command. Which brings us back to Schweinfurt, back to 11:47 a.m. Back to Morris in a vertical dive with 3 wingmen and 18 German fighters, shredding a formation of B-17s. Morris keyed his radio. "Red flight, on me, go for speed." He rolled his P-38 inverted. The horizon flipped. The earth filled his windscreen. He pushed the control yoke forward and let gravity take him. The twin Allisons howled. His airspeed indicator spun past 350, past 400, past 425. The dive angle was nearly 70 degrees. His vision narrowed at the edges. G-forces pressed him into his seat, despite being negative G. The airframe shuddered but held. At 18,000 feet, he leveled out behind the German formation. He was doing 448 miles per hour. The Focke-Wulfs and Messerschmitts were still climbing, still chasing the bombers, still slow. Morris thumbed the trigger. The 20mm cannon barked. 4 50 caliber machine guns added their voice. Tracer rounds converged on a Bf-109. The German fighter's canopy exploded. The aircraft snapped into a flat spin. Morris didn't watch it fall. He was already lining up the next target. A FW-190 was pulling into a climb. Morris walked his fire up the fighter's belly. Metal peeled away. The Focke-Wulf's engine seized. Black smoke poured from the cowling. Behind Morris, Wilson, Romano, and Jefferson had opened fire. Wilson got a Bf-109 head-on. The German pilot never saw him coming. The Messerschmitt disintegrated in mid-air. Romano caught a FW-190 in a climbing turn. His 50 cals punched through the fighter's wing root. The Focke-Wulf cartwheeled and fell. The Germans finally realized what was happening. They tried to brake. They tried to dive away. But Morris's flight was already below them, already faster. The P-38s had energy the German fighters couldn't match. Morris zoomed back up, converted his speed into altitude, and came down on another Bf-109. His cannon rounds shattered the fighter's tail section. The Messerschmitt went into an uncontrolled tumble. In 7 minutes, Morris shot down 5 German fighters. Wilson got 2, Romano got 2, Jefferson got 2. 11 German aircraft destroyed. 4 P-38s without a scratch. The remaining German fighters broke contact and ran. They scattered. They dove for the deck and ran for home at full throttle. The B-17s kept flying. Of the 60 bombers in that formation, 57 made it back to England. Without Morris's intervention, intelligence estimates suggested 30+ would have been lost. At 12:03 p.m., Morris keyed his radio and said, "Red flight reform, let's go home." The pilots of the 55th Fighter Group met Morris on the runway at Nuthampstead. His crew chief counted the bullet holes in his Lightning, 0. His gun camera footage showed 5 confirmed victories in just over 6 minutes of combat. Wilson, Romano, and Jefferson's cameras added 6 more. Lieutenant Colonel Frank James, the group commander, pulled Morris aside. James was 42, a career officer who'd flown biplanes in the 1920s. He looked at Morris for a long moment. Then he said, "What the hell did you just do up there?" Morris explained the tactics, the dive, the speed, the energy management, the physics. James said, "That's not in the doctrine." Morris said, "No, sir, it's not." James said, "How many of your men did you lose?" Morris said, "0, sir." James was quiet for maybe 30 seconds. Then he said, "Show me everything. I want every pilot in this group flying your way by next week." Over the next 2 weeks, Morris conducted informal training sessions. He showed pilots the math. He demonstrated the tactics. He emphasized, altitude is life, speed is life, energy is life. Never turn with the enemy. Dive, shoot, extend, zoom. Use the P-38's strengths. Ignore its weaknesses. By September 1st, 1943, every P-38 pilot in the 55th Fighter Group was using Morris's energy tactics. By September 15th, other P-38 units in the 8th Air Force had heard about it and were requesting transfers to train under Morris. The results were immediate and dramatic. In July 1943, the 55th Fighter Group's kill-to-loss ratio was 0, 8-1. For every German fighter they shot down, they lost 125 P-38s. In September 1943, after adopting Morris's tactics, the ratio jumped to 3, 7-1. By October, it was 4, 2-1. By November, the 55th Fighter Group had the highest kill ratio of any P-38 unit in Europe. Between August 16th and December 31st, 1943, P-38 units using energy tactics shot down 312 German fighters while losing 41 aircraft to enemy action, a 7, 6-1 ratio. For context, the overall 8th Air Force fighter average was 2, 1-1. German tactical reports from late 1943 stopped calling the P-38 easy prey. A captured Luftwaffe intelligence document from November 1943 reads, "American twin-engine fighters have altered tactics. Engage with extreme caution. They no longer fight defensively. Diving attacks from altitude with high-speed extensions make interception difficult." In December 1943, a Bf-109 pilot named Hauptmann Friedrich Lang was shot down by a P-38 over France and captured. During interrogation, he said, "We used to laugh at the Lightning. Then they changed. Now they're faster than us, heavier than us, and they won't fight fair. They just dive, shoot, and run. You can't catch them." But Morris never received official recognition for developing the tactics that revolutionized P-38 combat doctrine. The Army Air Forces never issued him a commendation. No medal, no mention in official reports. What happened instead was bureaucratic theft. In January 1944, a tactical memo titled "Optimized Energy Management for Twin-Engine Fighter Aircraft" was distributed to all 8th Air Force fighter groups. The memo outlined dive attack tactics, energy conservation, and vertical fighting doctrine for the P-38 Lightning. The memo was credited to Colonel Raymond Brooks, a staff officer at 8th Air Force Headquarters in High Wycombe, who had never flown a P-38 in combat. Brooks had copied Morris's tactics word for word from training documents Morris had written in September 1943. Morris found out when a pilot from another unit congratulated him on Colonel Brooks's excellent tactical innovations. Morris said nothing. He kept flying. He kept fighting. Between August 1943 and April 1944, he flew 127 combat missions. He shot down 14 German aircraft. He brought every one of his wingmen home alive. On April 8, 1944, Morris's P-38 was hit by flak over Berlin. His right engine caught fire. He nursed the crippled Lightning back across 400 miles of hostile territory and landed at Nuthampstead on one engine with 20 gallons of fuel remaining. His crew chief counted 187 holes in the airframe. Morris climbed out of the cockpit, walked to his quarters, and slept for 16 hours. 3 weeks later, the Army Air Forces sent Morris back to the United States. He'd completed his combat tour. He was reassigned to Training Command in Arizona, teaching new P-38 pilots the tactics he'd invented. The war ended in May 1945. Morris was 28 years old. He'd been promoted to lieutenant colonel. He'd flown more combat hours than almost any P-38 pilot in the European theater. He had 14 confirmed victories, possibly 6 more unconfirmed. He'd trained over 300 pilots. He'd changed how America fought the air war. His official commendations: 1 Distinguished Flying Cross, 1 Air Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters. Standard decorations, nothing special. In July 1945, Morris resigned his commission. He went home to Amarillo. He married a woman named Dorothy Hayes, who worked at the county library. They had 3 children. Morris opened a crop dusting business, Morris Aviation Services. No partner. Bobby Chen was dead. The business made enough money to buy a house and send the kids to college. Morris never talked about the war. His children didn't know he'd been a fighter pilot until they were teenagers. His grandchildren didn't know he'd revolutionized air combat doctrine until after he died. In 1963, a military historian named Dr. Alan Crawford was researching P-38 tactics for a book on the 8th Air Force. Crawford found Morris's training documents from 1943 in a storage facility at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. The documents had been misfiled and forgotten. Crawford tracked Morris down in Amarillo. Morris agreed to an interview. He was 46 years old. He ran a small crop dusting operation and coached Little League Baseball on weekends. Crawford asked him about August 16, 1943. Morris said, "We did what made sense. The P-38 was fast. We used the speed." Crawford asked if Morris was bitter about not receiving credit for developing the tactics. Morris said, "Bobby Chen should have gotten credit. He's the one who died, so I could figure it out." Crawford's book, Thunder Over Europe: Fighter Tactics in the 8th Air Force, was published in 1965. The book devoted 3 chapters to Morris's energy fighting innovations. Crawford wrote, "Major James Morris likely saved several hundred American lives and changed the course of the air war over Europe. History has forgotten him. This is unconscionable." The book sold 4,000 copies. It went out of print in 1967. Morris kept flying crop dusters until 1982. He was 65. His eyesight was failing. He sold the business to a younger pilot and retired. He and Dorothy moved to a small house outside Amarillo with a view of the plains where he'd learned to fly. On March 14, 1989, James Herbert "Herky" Morris died of a heart attack while working in his garage. He was 72 years old. The Amarillo Globe News ran a 4-sentence obituary. James Morris, longtime local pilot and businessman, died March 14th, survived by wife Dorothy, children James Jr., Susan and Robert, and 7 grandchildren, services at St. Andrew's Church, in lieu of flowers, donations to the American Legion. No mention of 14 confirmed victories, no mention of revolutionizing fighter tactics, no mention of 4 P-38s shooting down 11 German fighters in 7 minutes. In 2003, the 8th Air Force Historical Society erected a small memorial plaque at the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio. The plaque lists the names of P-38 pilots who scored 5 or more victories in the European theater. Morris's name is on the plaque, 14th from the top. Small brass letters. Easy to miss. In 2011, the 55th Fighter Group held a reunion in Las Vegas. 6 surviving pilots attended. They were all in their late 80s or early 90s. They spent an afternoon telling stories. Lieutenant Tom Jefferson, 91 years old, retired dentist from Atlanta, said, "Herky saved my life, saved all our lives. He showed us how to fight. We'd be dead without him." Someone asked if Jefferson ever told anyone about Morris's tactics. Jefferson said, "I told my son once. He didn't care. Nobody cares now." That same year, a German aviation historian named Klaus Richter published a study titled Tactical Evolution in Luftwaffe Fighter Doctrine, 1943-1944. The study analyzed German combat reports and identified a critical turning point in August-September 1943, when American P-38 units suddenly and inexplicably adopted energy fighting tactics that German pilots were unprepared to counter. Richter's study never mentioned Morris by name. Richter didn't know Morris existed. The truth is this: real innovation in war doesn't come from generals or staff officers or textbooks. It comes from a 26-year-old pilot from Amarillo, Texas, sitting alone at 2 in the morning, trying to figure out why his friends keep dying. It comes from someone willing to ignore doctrine, risk court-martial, and trust physics over protocol. James Morris didn't set out to be a hero. He set out to keep his pilots alive. He succeeded. And history forgot him anyway, but you won't. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel. These forgotten heroes deserve to be remembered. They deserve more than 4-sentence obituaries and missed names on memorial plaques. Drop a comment below. Tell us what you think. Tell us if you knew someone like Morris, someone whose contribution was ignored, someone who changed everything and got nothing in return. And thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. Thank you for keeping these stories alive when everyone else has moved on. James Herbert Morris, Amarillo, Texas, 26 years old, 5'7" in his boots. The man who taught America how to fight in the P-38 Lightning. The man who saved hundreds of lives. Remember his name.